The internet is on fire tonight, and if you thought you'd seen every possible twist in reality TV drama, think again. Because this time, it wasn't cheating rumors, secret messages, or backroom betrayals that sent fans spiraling, it was one explosive phrase that nobody saw coming. In a moment that felt equal parts shocking, messy, and wildly disrespectful, Kirk Frost allegedly crossed a line that many believe can never be uncrossed when he referred to Rasheeda's mother as a bad bitch. And yes, fans completely lost it. What started as a tense family conversation reportedly turned into a full-blown verbal grenade, detonating across social media within minutes. Emotions ran high, voices were raised, and suddenly the fragile peace holding this family together was shattered. Was it a compliment taken wildly out of context? Or was it the ultimate sign of disrespect toward a matriarch who has never been shy about defending her daughter? Depending on who you ask, the answer changes by the second. Insiders claim the room went silent when the words left Kirk's mouth, followed by gasps, stunned stares, and a reaction that no one could have prepared for. Shirlene Harville allegedly didn't hesitate, making it clear she was not the one to play with. Meanwhile, Rasheeda herself was said to be torn between shock, embarrassment, and pure rage, caught in the middle of loyalty to her husband and respect for her mother. As clips circulated and fans weighed in, timelines exploded with outrage, memes, and heated debates. The family was left divided, friendships were tested, and the question on everyone's mind became impossible to ignore. Was this the moment that finally broke everything apart on Love and Hip Hop Atlanta? Buckle up, because this drama is just getting started. The tension had been building long before anyone realized the cameras were still rolling, the air in the room thick with unfinished conversations, old wounds, and the kind of resentment that never really sleeps. What was supposed to be a private family discussion quickly turned into something darker, something explosive, as voices overlapped and emotions ran high. Rasheeda sat stiffly on the couch, her hands folded tightly in her lap, eyes darting between Kirk and her mother, already sensing that this moment was about to go left in a way no one could control. Fans would later say you could feel it through the screen, that uneasy pause before everything falls apart. Kirk leaned back in his chair, jaw clenched, clearly irritated. He had that look fans knew too well, the one that meant he felt cornered and was ready to lash out. Her mother wasn't backing down either. She had spent years watching her daughter cry, forgive, rebuild, and get hurt all over again. Tonight, she wasn't in the mood for excuses or half apologies. Her voice was calm but sharp, the kind that cuts deeper than yelling ever could. She questioned Kirk's loyalty, his respect, and whether he truly understood the damage his actions had caused over the years. Each word landed like a punch. Rasheeda tried to intervene, softly at first, asking them both to slow down, to remember they were family. But no one was listening. Kirk rolled his eyes, muttering under his breath, clearly offended that her mother was once again questioning his role as a husband. The room felt smaller with every second. Producers exchanged nervous glances off camera, sensing they were witnessing a moment that could not be undone. This wasn't scripted, this was raw. Then it happened. Kirk leaned forward, laughed in disbelief, and said the words that would set the internet on fire. He called Rasheeda's mother a bad bitch. The second it left his mouth, time seemed to freeze. Rasheeda's eyes widened in shock. Her mother's expression shifted instantly, from controlled frustration to pure disbelief. Fans would later debate his tone endlessly, some claiming it sounded like a twisted compliment, others calling it blatant disrespect. But in that moment, intent didn't matter. The damage was done. The silence that followed was deafening. You could hear a pin drop. Rasheeda's mother slowly stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, a sound that echoed the tension in the room. She asked him to repeat himself, her voice dangerously calm. Kirk shrugged, clearly realizing too late that he had crossed a line but too prideful to fully backtrack. He tried to explain himself, stumbling over his words, saying he didn't mean it like that people were too sensitive these days. That only made things worse. Rasheeda jumped up, stepping between them, her voice shaking as she demanded Kirk apologize immediately. She looked torn, humiliated, and angry all at once. This was her husband and her mother, the two people she loved most, standing on opposite sides of an emotional battlefield she had been fighting on for years. Tears welled up in her eyes as she begged them to stop before something irreversible happened. Her mother wasn't having it. She reminded Kirk that respect wasn't optional, especially when it came to her. She spoke about generations, about dignity, about how she had carried herself as a woman and as a mother. Calling her out of her name, no matter the intention, was unacceptable. Kirk tried to laugh it off again, but his laugh sounded hollow now, nervous. He could feel the energy shifting, not just in the room, but beyond it. Somewhere out there, fans were already choosing sides. Voices rose. Accusations flew. Her mother accused Kirk of never truly changing, of hiding behind charm and excuses while leaving emotional wreckage behind him. Kirk fired back, claiming he was always the villain no matter what he did, that nothing was ever good enough. Rasheeda stood frozen, hands covering her mouth, overwhelmed by the realization that this fight was bigger than one comment. It was about years of unresolved pain. Off camera, whispers spread quickly. Someone mentioned how this was going to look when it aired. Another producer quietly asked if security should be on standby. Emotions ran high, and the family was clearly divided. Rasheeda's mother refused to sit back down, stating she would not be disrespected in front of cameras or anyone else. Kirk stood up too, towering, his face flushed, anger and regret battling behind his eyes. Rasheeda finally broke down, crying openly now, saying she was tired of being stuck in the middle, tired of defending choices she herself questioned late at night. Her words cut deep. Kirk looked stunned, as if hearing for the first time how much this constant conflict had worn her down. Her mother softened slightly at the sight of her daughter's tears but did not apologize for standing her ground. As the scene spiraled, phones started buzzing. Someone in the room glanced down at social media and gasped. Clips were already leaking. Fans were shocked. Comments poured in faster than anyone could read them. Some called Kirk disrespectful beyond repair. Others accused Rasheeda's mother of provoking him. Hashtags started trending within minutes. The drama had officially escaped the room and entered the public arena. Kirk ran a hand through his hair, pacing, realizing this wasn't just a family argument anymore. This was about image, legacy, and whether this family could survive another very public fracture. Rasheeda's mother gathered her things, saying she needed space before she said something she couldn't take back. Before walking out, she turned and told Kirk one last time that respect was earned and easily lost. The door closed behind her with a finality that left everyone shaken. Rasheeda sank back onto the couch, sobbing quietly, while Kirk stood there, staring at the floor, the weight of his words finally crashing down on him. No one spoke. The damage lingered in the silence. Fans watching later would say this felt different, heavier than anything before. And as the cameras slowly faded out, one thing was clear to everyone involved. This was only the beginning. The silence didn't last long. It never does in a room where too much has been said and nothing has been resolved. Kirk finally exhaled, a long shaky breath, and muttered that everyone was overreacting, but his voice lacked conviction. Rasheeda lifted her head slowly, eyes red and swollen, staring at him like she was seeing a stranger. She asked him how he could possibly think those words were acceptable, especially after everything they had been through. Her voice wasn't loud. It was worse than that. It was tired. Kirk tried to explain again, saying he grew up hearing that phrase used as praise, saying he didn't mean any harm. But the more he talked, the more defensive he sounded, and the deeper he dug himself in. Rasheeda shook her head, telling him intention didn't erase impact, especially not when it came to her mother. She reminded him that her mom had been the one holding her together when things fell apart, the one who stood by her when the world judged her for staying. Emotions ran high as she asked him point blank if he respected her family at all. Before Kirk could answer, the door opened again. Her mother hadn't left the building. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, having clearly heard enough through the thin walls. The tension snapped back instantly. Producers froze. No one moved. She said she came back because she wasn't done speaking her truth. She refused to let this moment be twisted later. Her voice was firm, steady, and unapologetic. She looked directly at Kirk and said that words reveal character, especially in moments of anger. She accused him of hiding disrespect behind humor and playing dumb when called out. She said she had watched him hurt her daughter repeatedly and then expect forgiveness without real accountability. Kirk bristled, saying she never gave him a chance to change, that she always saw him as the villain. The argument reignited, louder this time, rawer. Rasheeda stood between them again, begging them to stop, her hands trembling. She said she felt like she was being torn in half, like no matter what she did, she was betraying someone she loved. Her breakdown shifted the energy once more. Even Kirk seemed shaken, reaching out toward her but stopping himself. Her mother sighed deeply, the anger in her eyes mixing with heartbreak. She reminded Rasheeda that standing up for herself wasn't betrayal. It was survival. Meanwhile, outside that room, the reaction was growing louder by the minute. Friends of the family started calling. Cast members were texting. Everyone had an opinion. Some urged Rasheeda to walk away and protect her peace. Others told Kirk he needed to apologize publicly and privately if he wanted any chance of redemption. Fans were shocked by how quickly the situation escalated, dissecting every facial expression, every pause, every word. Kirk's phone buzzed nonstop. He glanced at it, then shoved it back into his pocket, clearly overwhelmed. He admitted, quietly now, that he didn't realize how deep the resentment ran. He said he felt constantly judged, constantly reminded of his past mistakes, and like nothing he did would ever be enough. Rasheeda listened, arms wrapped around herself, conflicted. She understood his frustration, but she couldn't ignore the pattern anymore. Her mother stepped closer, lowering her voice, saying accountability wasn't punishment. It was growth. She said if Kirk truly loved Rasheeda, he would stop centering his own discomfort and start acknowledging the pain he caused, not just to Rasheeda, but to the entire family. Those words hung in the air. Kirk swallowed hard. For the first time, he looked genuinely unsure of himself. A producer gently suggested taking a break, but no one wanted to pause this moment. It felt too real, too necessary. Rasheeda asked Kirk if he could apologize to her mother without excuses. Not for the cameras. Not for the fans. Just because it was the right thing to do. Kirk hesitated, the room holding its breath. Finally, he turned to her mother and said he was sorry for disrespecting her, for using words that crossed a line. His apology wasn't perfect, but it was quieter, stripped of bravado. Her mother studied him for a long moment. She didn't immediately accept it. Instead, she said apologies only mattered if behavior changed. She said she hoped this wasn't just another performance. Rasheeda nodded slowly, agreeing. The family wasn't healed by that moment, but something shifted. The yelling stopped. The anger cooled into exhaustion. Later that night, after everyone went their separate ways, the fallout continued. Rasheeda sat alone in her room, scrolling through comments she probably shouldn't have been reading. Fans were divided. Some praised her for standing up for her mother. Others accused her of letting her family disrespect her marriage. Kirk sat in another room, staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene over and over, realizing how one phrase had cracked open years of unresolved tension. Group chats exploded. Friends weighed in, offering advice, taking sides. Some said this was the wake-up call Kirk needed. Others warned that public humiliation often hardens people instead of changing them. Rasheeda's mother spoke to friends of her own, expressing both anger and guilt. She wondered if she had pushed too hard, even though she knew she had spoken her truth. Days later, the clip went viral. Reaction videos popped up everywhere. Commentators slowed down the footage, analyzing tone and body language. Fans were shocked by the rawness of it all. Emotions ran high online, just as they had in that room. The family was left divided not just internally, but publicly, under the harsh spotlight of opinion and judgment. Rasheeda tried to keep it together, appearing calm in public, but privately she questioned everything. She wondered if love was supposed to feel this heavy, if loyalty meant constant sacrifice. Kirk tried to do damage control, telling close friends he never meant to disrespect her mother, insisting it was taken out of context. But context didn't seem to matter anymore. The narrative had taken on a life of its own. The tension between Kirk and Rasheeda's mother remained unresolved, simmering beneath the surface. They avoided each other, communicating only through Rasheeda when necessary. Family gatherings felt awkward and forced. Laughter didn't come easily. Every smile felt fragile. Fans noticed the distance, speculating wildly about what would happen next. And through it all, Rasheeda stood at the center, carrying the weight of everyone's expectations, trying to decide whether this moment would become another chapter of forgiveness or the beginning of a very different ending. The question lingered in every silence, every glance, every unfinished conversation. Nothing was settled, nothing was fixed, and everyone could feel it. The days that followed felt heavier than anyone expected, like the air itself was thick with unfinished business. Rasheeda tried to distract herself with work, studio sessions, meetings, anything to keep her mind from replaying that moment over and over again. But every time her phone buzzed, her stomach tightened. Fans were still shocked. Emotions ran high online, and no matter how much she tried to ignore it, the noise found its way in. Every comment felt like another person pulling at her from a different direction. Kirk, on the other hand, was restless. He moved through the house like a ghost, barely speaking, avoiding eye contact whenever Rasheeda walked into the room. Guilt sat heavy on him, but so did resentment. In his mind, he felt misunderstood, labeled, boxed into a version of himself he was trying to outgrow. But deep down, a quieter voice kept asking why the same conflicts kept repeating, why apologies always came after damage instead of before it. Rasheeda's mother stayed distant. She didn't call. She didn't text. When family members tried to smooth things over, she shut it down, saying space was necessary. She felt disrespected not just as a woman, but as a mother who had protected her child for years. Friends told her she had every right to stand her ground. Others warned her that holding on to anger could push Rasheeda further into emotional exhaustion. Still, she refused to pretend everything was fine. When they finally crossed paths again, it wasn't planned. It happened at a family gathering that neither wanted to attend but both felt obligated to show up for. The room filled with forced smiles and awkward greetings. Everyone could feel the tension the second Kirk and her mother locked eyes. Rasheeda's heart pounded as she stood between them, silently praying nothing would explode again. Conversation stayed shallow at first. Weather, food, small talk that meant nothing. But beneath it all, emotions ran high. Kirk tried to be overly polite, his tone careful, controlled. Her mother responded with clipped words, respectful but cold. The distance between them felt louder than any argument. Rasheeda watched closely, analyzing every glance, every pause, wondering if this fragile truce would shatter. Then someone brought it up. Not directly, but enough. A relative joked about how the family had been trending lately. The room went quiet. Rasheeda felt her chest tighten. Kirk stiffened. Her mother set her fork down slowly. The joke landed wrong, reopening wounds that hadn't even begun to heal. Rasheeda finally spoke, her voice trembling but firm. She said she couldn't keep pretending this didn't hurt. She said the family couldn't move forward without addressing the pain honestly. Everyone turned to her, surprised by her sudden strength. She admitted she felt pulled apart, that she loved her husband but also owed her mother respect. She said she was tired of being strong for everyone else while falling apart in private. Her words shifted the energy. Kirk looked at her with a mix of regret and fear, realizing how close he was to losing more than just public approval. Her mother's expression softened slightly, the anger giving way to concern. She reached out, touching Rasheeda's hand, reminding her that her well-being mattered more than anyone's pride. Kirk finally spoke again, this time without defensiveness. He admitted he had messed up, not just with the words he used, but with how often he dismissed feelings when they were inconvenient. He said he didn't want to be the source of constant pain anymore. His voice cracked as he admitted he didn't know how to fix years of damage, but he wanted to try. Her mother listened, arms crossed, not ready to forgive but willing to hear him out. She said trust wasn't rebuilt with speeches. It came from consistent actions. She said she needed to see real change, not just when cameras were around or when backlash hit. Kirk nodded, knowing there was no shortcut this time. Even with that moment of honesty, the tension didn't disappear. It shifted, settled into something quieter but still heavy. The family was left divided in subtle ways now, choosing sides through silence rather than shouting. Fans watching from the outside debated endlessly, some praising Kirk's vulnerability, others saying it was too little, too late. Emotions ran high across every platform. Rasheeda found herself questioning what healing even looked like anymore. She wondered if love meant enduring pain or knowing when to draw a line. Late at night, she replayed her mother's words about survival, about standing up for herself. She thought about Kirk's promises, how many times she had believed them before. The uncertainty gnawed at her. Kirk tried to prove himself in small ways. Helping more, listening longer, choosing his words carefully, but every effort felt like it was under a microscope. One wrong tone, one careless comment, and everything could unravel again. He felt the pressure, not just from his family but from the watching world, waiting to see if he would fail. Rasheeda's mother remained cautious. She didn't attack him, but she didn't open her arms either. She watched, measured, protected. Her priority was her daughter's peace, even if that meant being labeled difficult or unforgiving. She had made peace with being misunderstood if it meant setting boundaries. As weeks passed, the drama didn't fade. It evolved. Interviews hinted at unresolved issues. Cryptic posts fueled speculation. Fans were shocked by how deep the fracture seemed, realizing this wasn't just a momentary blow-up but a reflection of long-standing issues. Emotions ran high every time one of them spoke publicly, each word dissected for hidden meaning. Rasheeda stood at the center of it all, trying to breathe through the noise. She knew a decision was coming, whether she was ready or not. Something had shifted permanently, and there was no going back to how things were before that one phrase changed everything. The family was left divided, the future uncertain, and the next move would define everything that came after. The pressure kept building, quietly but relentlessly, like a storm no one could outrun. Rasheeda felt it every time she stepped outside, every time a fan looked at her with pity or curiosity, every time someone asked how she was really doing. She smiled through it, nodded, said she was fine, but inside she felt stretched thin. The fight had changed something fundamental, not just in her marriage but in how she saw herself. She had spent years being the strong one, the forgiving one, the peacemaker. Now she wasn't sure how much strength she had left. Kirk noticed the distance growing between them, even when they were in the same room. Conversations felt careful, rehearsed. Laughter didn't come easily anymore. He tried to fill the silence with gestures, with plans, with promises, but something was missing. Trust doesn't shatter loudly. Sometimes it just slips away, unnoticed, until you realize you're reaching for something that isn't there anymore. One night, after another long day of pretending everything was normal, Rasheeda finally spoke. She told Kirk she felt invisible, like her pain was always secondary to damage control and public perception. She said the comment about her mother wasn't just offensive, it was symbolic. It represented how easily boundaries were crossed, how often her feelings were minimized. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook as she spoke. Kirk listened, really listened this time, and the weight of her words hit him harder than any online backlash ever could. He admitted he had spent too much time defending himself instead of understanding her. He confessed that he didn't know how to handle criticism without feeling attacked, and that fear often turned into arrogance. It wasn't an excuse, just an explanation. Rasheeda appreciated the honesty, but honesty didn't erase the hurt. Meanwhile, her mother watched from a distance, conflicted. She saw Kirk trying, saw Rasheeda struggling, and wondered if stepping back had been the right choice. She didn't regret standing up for herself, but she worried about the toll this ongoing tension was taking on her daughter. Still, she refused to soften her stance prematurely. Protecting Rasheeda meant letting her make her own decisions, even painful ones. The fans, of course, had their own theories. Every move was scrutinized. Every silence was interpreted. Some claimed the marriage was already over. Others insisted this was just another rough patch they would survive. Emotions ran high in comment sections and reaction videos, where strangers debated the fate of a family they only knew through screens. Friends tried to intervene. Some encouraged counseling. Others suggested space. Rasheeda felt overwhelmed by advice, each suggestion pulling her in a different direction. What she needed most was clarity, and that was the one thing no one could give her. Late at night, she lay awake questioning everything. Could love exist without respect? Could forgiveness keep saving something that kept breaking? Kirk proposed a family sit-down, off camera, away from the noise. Rasheeda hesitated but agreed, knowing avoidance wouldn't bring peace. When the day came, the atmosphere was tense but quieter than before. No yelling, no accusations, just heavy honesty. Her mother spoke about boundaries, about how words carry history and power. Kirk acknowledged that he had underestimated that he had spoken carelessly and paid the price. There was no dramatic reconciliation, no tearful hugs, just an understanding that healing would take time, if it happened at all. Rasheeda felt both relieved and scared. Relieved that the conversation didn't explode. Scared because the path forward was still unclear. After that meeting, things shifted again. Kirk became more reserved, more thoughtful. Rasheeda focused inward, prioritizing her own peace instead of managing everyone else's emotions. Her mother maintained her distance but stayed present, supportive without interference. The family wasn't whole, but it wasn't at war either. Yet the unresolved questions lingered. Could Kirk sustain this change without an audience watching? Could Rasheeda rebuild trust without losing herself? Fans continued to speculate, emotions running high with every new development. The family was left divided in ways that weren't always visible, fractures beneath the surface that only time would reveal. Rasheeda knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened next, she could no longer ignore her own voice. The drama had forced her to confront truths she had avoided for too long. And as uncertain as the future felt, she was finally ready to face it on her own terms, even if that meant everything she knew was about to change. The turning point came quietly, not with shouting or headlines, but with a realization that settled deep in Rasheeda's chest and refused to leave. It happened on an ordinary morning, one that should have felt routine, but didn't. She sat alone at the kitchen table, coffee gone cold, scrolling past messages she hadn't answered and calls she didn't return. For the first time, she wasn't thinking about fixing anything. She was thinking about herself. And that thought scared her more than any argument ever had. Kirk walked in, noticed the distance immediately, and asked if she was okay. She looked up at him and didn't answer right away. That pause said more than words ever could. She finally told him she needed time, not space filled with promises, but real time to understand what she wanted without pressure. Kirk nodded, trying to hide the panic rising in his chest. He agreed, but agreement didn't stop fear from creeping in. He knew this wasn't just another phase. Days passed differently after that. Quieter. Deliberate. Rasheeda spent more time alone, taking long drives, revisiting places that reminded her who she was before everything became complicated. She talked more with her mother, not about Kirk specifically, but about life, strength, and the cost of always being resilient. Those conversations grounded her. Her mother didn't push opinions anymore. She just listened, offering perspective without judgment. Kirk struggled in the silence. Without constant conflict, he was left alone with his thoughts. He reflected on how often he had relied on charm to escape accountability, how easily he dismissed discomfort if it challenged his ego. This time felt different because Rasheeda wasn't fighting him. She was stepping back, and that scared him more than anger ever did. Fans noticed the shift immediately. The absence of public reassurance sparked even more speculation. Emotions ran high online as people debated what silence really meant. Some claimed this was growth. Others called it the calm before the end. The family was left divided not just emotionally, but in public opinion, with every move magnified. Eventually, Rasheeda asked for one more conversation. Not to argue, not to revisit the past, but to talk honestly about the future. They sat across from each other, no distractions, no raised voices. She told him she loved him, but love alone wasn't enough anymore. She needed respect that didn't have to be demanded, accountability that didn't come after damage, and a partner who understood boundaries without being taught through pain. Kirk listened, tears welling despite his efforts to stay composed. He admitted he didn't know how to undo years of habits overnight. He said he wanted to be better, not just for her, but for himself. Rasheeda believed he meant it. But belief didn't guarantee trust. And trust was what had been broken. Her mother was informed later, not as a mediator, but as family. She supported Rasheeda's need for clarity, reminding her that choosing peace was not selfish. She told her daughter that no matter what decision she made, she would stand by her. That assurance lifted a weight Rasheeda hadn't realized she was carrying. As time moved on, the tension transformed into something quieter and more introspective. Kirk continued working on himself, knowing words wouldn't be enough this time. Rasheeda focused on rebuilding her sense of self, rediscovering parts of her identity that had been overshadowed by constant compromise. The family dynamic remained cautious, careful, but no longer explosive. Fans remained shocked by the evolution of the drama. There was no dramatic breakup announcement, no sudden reconciliation. Just real people navigating the aftermath of words that couldn't be taken back. Emotions still ran high, but now they were tempered with reflection instead of reaction. In the end, nothing was wrapped up neatly. There were no clear villains or heroes, just a family facing the consequences of honesty, conflict, and growth. The future remained uncertain, but one thing had changed forever. Rasheeda had found her voice, and this time, she wasn't afraid to use it. Time kept moving, whether anyone felt ready or not, and with every passing day the weight of that moment continued to reshape everything around it. Rasheeda noticed changes in herself first. She laughed differently now, softer, more guarded. She spoke with intention, choosing silence when she once would have over-explained. People around her sensed it too. Friends said she seemed calmer, but also distant, like someone standing at the edge of a decision they hadn't fully named yet. Kirk tried to match her pace, but he was always half a step behind. He read books, talked to people he trusted, even sat quietly in rooms where he would once have filled the air with noise. He wanted to prove he could change without being prompted, but every effort felt like it was happening under an invisible clock. He feared that by the time he became the man Rasheeda needed, she might already be gone. The house felt different, not hostile, not warm, just neutral. Conversations stayed practical. Schedules, responsibilities, surface-level check-ins. The intimacy that once defined them felt paused, suspended in uncertainty. Some nights Kirk lay awake listening to Rasheeda's steady breathing, wondering if she was already emotionally preparing for a life that didn't include him in the same way. Rasheeda's mother watched closely, saying little but noticing everything. She saw her daughter standing straighter, speaking more confidently, setting boundaries without apology. It made her proud, but also sad. Growth often comes with loss, and she knew Rasheeda was grieving something even if she couldn't yet name it. She reminded her daughter that strength didn't always mean endurance. Sometimes it meant letting go of what no longer fit. Fans continued to debate, dissect, and project. Emotions ran high every time Rasheeda posted something cryptic or Kirk shared a reflective message. Some viewers claimed the silence was proof of maturity. Others insisted it was a slow unraveling. The family was left divided in public perception, with no version of the story satisfying everyone. Eventually, Rasheeda made a choice, not dramatic, not final, but intentional. She decided to step back emotionally while staying present physically, giving herself the space to feel without pressure. She communicated this clearly to Kirk, telling him she needed consistency, not intensity, patience, not persuasion. Kirk agreed, even though it hurt. He knew pushing would only confirm her doubts. Weeks turned into months. Small changes accumulated. Kirk showed up differently, not perfectly, but steadily. Rasheeda noticed, but she also noticed how much lighter she felt focusing on herself. She poured energy into her work, her friendships, her passions. She felt grounded in a way she hadn't in years. The tension with her mother softened naturally, without forced apologies or dramatic gestures. Mutual respect replaced defensiveness. Boundaries were understood instead of challenged. The relationship healed in quiet ways, through shared meals, laughter, and honest conversations that didn't circle back to the same wounds. Still, uncertainty remained. Love didn't disappear, but it changed shape. Rasheeda understood now that love without respect was unsustainable, and respect without action was meaningless. Kirk understood that accountability wasn't something you performed, it was something you lived. Fans watching from the outside were still shocked by the slow, real evolution of the drama. There were no clear answers, no tidy conclusions. Emotions ran high because reality didn't follow a script. The family was left divided in ways that couldn't be resolved by a single apology or moment. And yet, through all of it, something powerful emerged. Honesty replaced denial. Boundaries replaced chaos. Growth replaced repetition. The phrase that once ignited outrage became a turning point, not because of how loud it was, but because of what it revealed. Nothing was guaranteed. The future was still unwritten. But for the first time in a long time, Rasheeda felt in control of her own narrative. And whatever came next, she knew it would be built on truth, not fear, and that alone made all the difference. The realization settled in deeper as time went on, not loud or dramatic, but steady and unavoidable. Rasheeda no longer woke up anxious, wondering what mood the day would bring or what fire she would have to put out. Instead, she woke up focused, intentional, aware of her own emotional temperature. That awareness was new, and it changed everything. She no longer reacted automatically. She observed, processed, and then chose how to respond. For someone who had spent years in survival mode, this felt revolutionary. Kirk noticed it too. He could feel the shift in how she spoke to him, how she looked at him, how she no longer rushed to smooth things over. When disagreements came up, she didn't argue endlessly. She stated her position clearly and stopped. That silence forced Kirk to sit with his own thoughts instead of deflecting. It was uncomfortable, but necessary. He began to understand that the chaos he once confused for passion had actually been avoidance. The phrase that started it all lingered like a ghost. It wasn't repeated, but it didn't need to be. Its impact lived in every pause, every careful choice of words. Kirk knew now that it wasn't just about what he said, but about what it symbolized. It exposed how quickly respect could slip when ego took over. That truth followed him everywhere, reminding him that growth wasn't about grand gestures but daily discipline. Rasheeda's mother continued to play her role quietly, firmly. She didn't interfere, but she didn't disappear either. She checked in, asked real questions, listened without interrupting. She reminded Rasheeda of who she was before she learned to compromise herself for peace. Those conversations became anchors, grounding Rasheeda when doubt crept in. The bond between them strengthened, no longer rooted in protection alone, but mutual respect. Outside their world, fans stayed invested. Emotions ran high every time something new surfaced, even if it was small. A picture, a quote, a moment of silence. People projected their own experiences onto the situation, seeing reflections of their own relationships, their own boundaries crossed, their own lessons learned too late. The drama had become bigger than the family itself. It became a mirror. Kirk faced consequences in ways he hadn't anticipated. Not just public criticism, but internal reckoning. He realized how often he had relied on charm to escape accountability, how easily he dismissed discomfort as drama. This time, there was nowhere to hide. Rasheeda wasn't chasing closure. She was building clarity. And clarity doesn't negotiate. There were moments of hope. Small laughs. Shared memories. Glimpses of what once was. But they no longer carried the same weight. Rasheeda understood that nostalgia could not guide her future. She had learned the hard way that love without alignment eventually turns into resentment. That lesson stayed with her, shaping every decision she made moving forward. The family dynamic settled into something unfamiliar but calmer. No explosive arguments. No forced smiles. Just honesty, even when it was uncomfortable. The family was left divided in subtle ways, not by anger, but by growth happening at different speeds. And that was okay. Not everything needed to be synchronized to be real. Kirk continued showing up, knowing consistency was his only language now. He stopped asking for reassurance. He stopped demanding forgiveness. He focused on behavior, understanding that trust was rebuilt in silence, not speeches. Whether it would be enough, he didn't know. But for the first time, he wasn't performing change. He was practicing it. Rasheeda felt stronger, not because everything was resolved, but because she finally trusted herself. She no longer feared the outcome. She knew that whatever happened next, she would survive it without losing her voice. That confidence changed how she carried herself, how she spoke, how she loved. Fans were still shocked by the evolution of the story. There was no dramatic finale, no clear ending. Emotions ran high because the truth didn't fit neatly into a narrative. Some wanted reconciliation, others wanted separation, but the reality was more complex, more human. Growth rarely looks dramatic. It looks quiet, intentional, and slow. The moment that once felt like chaos became a catalyst. Not because of outrage alone, but because it forced honesty where denial once lived. It revealed cracks that had been ignored, patterns that had been normalized, boundaries that had been crossed too many times. In the end, the family wasn't broken by words. It was reshaped by truth. And while the future remained uncertain, one thing was clear. Nothing would ever go back to how it was before. And for the first time, that didn't feel like a loss. It felt like a beginning. Now it's your turn. After everything you've just heard, the tension, the emotional breakdowns, the words that changed everything, the boundaries drawn, and the future left hanging in the balance, one question remains. Where do you stand? Was Kirk completely out of line, or do you think the situation was blown out of proportion? Did Rasheeda handle it the right way, or should she have drawn the line long before it ever reached this point? Fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and the family was left divided, but the story isn't finished yet. This is exactly why your voice matters. Reality TV drama doesn't end when the cameras stop rolling. It lives on in conversations like this, in opinions, in debates, and in the lessons we take from it. So don't stay silent. Drop a comment right now and tell us what you think really happened behind the scenes and what you believe should happen next. Do you see reconciliation in their future, or is this the beginning of a permanent shift? If you're hooked on stories like this, full of raw emotion, unexpected twists, and moments that make you question everything, make sure you hit that like button. It helps the channel more than you know and lets us know you want more deep dives into the drama everyone's talking about. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter, because trust us, this story is far from over. Share this video with someone who always has an opinion on reality TV chaos, and come back to see what other fans are saying. The comments are already heating up, and this debate is just getting started. Stay locked in, stay vocal, and we'll see you in the next one.